Welcome to Ordinary to Badass, episode number 363. In this episode, you're going to hear from Clementine Moss. And Clementine is the drummer of Led Zeppelin powerhouse Zepparella. She's also a spiritual counselor and author. In this episode, we talk about everything from meditation, mindfulness, to rock and roll. It's so good. And we also talk about lifelong learning and the importance of curiosity. And then last, we talk about inner child work and overcoming expectations. This episode is so good. So if you like rock and roll, if you like meditation, there's so much goodness in here for you. And even if you like to see the contrast, right? Because you don't hear every day about the similarities between rock and roll and meditation. It's so cool. So stay tuned. I know you're going to love this episode. Before we get there, you can head on over to ordinarytobadass.com/bundle if you want to grab an epic bundle. And this is for women who work in predominantly male industries and are or want to step into leadership roles. This bundle is so amazing. So I want you to check it out. If you have any interest at all in stepping into a leadership role, this is for you. All right. With that, let's get to the episode.
Be confident, be bold, be authentic, but don't forget to take action. This is Ordinary to Badass, where our stories empower women to step into the spotlight of their own lives and pursue what they're truly passionate about. It's time to step into the arena and become more than just extraordinary. It's time to become a badass with your host, Marie Sonneman.
Welcome to Ordinary to Badass. Whether you're ordinary or badass, I'm so glad you're here. Today's guest is Clementine Moss. Clementine, thank you so much for being here. Excited to have you on the show.
Thank you so much. I'm excited to be here. See what we stir up here.
So before we go any further, I've got to ask you, do you consider yourself ordinary or badass?
Let's see. I mostly consider myself ordinary with badass moments, I would say.
Why is that? Like, why do you consider yourself ordinary?
Because I don't think that I'm special, and I think that I have a big believer in, I am you and you are me, we are one. And so it's hard for me to see myself as special outside of that. I think what is in me is in everybody. So I guess that's the way I see it.
So tell me about these badass moments. What has sparked these badass moments? And have you found that maybe once you found your first or second badass moment, that it helped to spark more as you went along?
Yeah, I think that the way that I can say that I have those badass moments, the way that I can see myself as badass is in that I have never needed to do what other people think I should do. I think I have a good sense of not following the should, but rather following kind of my own weird light. And an example of that is, that I became a musician when I was 27 years old, when I decided that, my path of being a writer. I was in New York City, and I had moved there to be a writer, and I had realized that that I didn't feel like I had lived enough to write. And I was looking around for something to do, and I thought, I know, maybe I don't know, take a drum lesson. I've never played drums before, and I took a drum lesson, and I just got hooked immediately, and it never seemed out of the question that I would become a musician. And I think that mindset of just letting go of, at 27, I'm supposed to be doing these things. I'm supposed to stick to my path. I'm supposed to do what everybody expects. That was never even a question. It was just like, where is my enthusiasm? This is really lighting me up. Let me just follow it. And I think that's a quality I'm happy with myself. I don't feel a sense of limitation by the people around me. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. I was just started like a productivity book, and of course I can't remember what it's called, but they were talking about like you're more productive when you're actually doing things that bring you joy and make you happy. And it sounds like, oh, duh, common sense, but we always think we have to be so disciplined to do this, but actually you'll probably get more done if you're enjoying what you do.
Yeah, I love the idea of just following our enthusiasm, and I also really love the idea of having a mindset of wanting to always learn. And, in different points of my life where I felt like I was kind of spinning my wheels or didn't know what the next step was, I would just take a class. I remember I've taken so many classes in things, and some of them panned out to be really profoundly important in my life. And other things were like sewing, where I learned so much about the way I learn and about the way I see the world, but I wouldn't say that I'm a seamstress by any means, right? But I think that, just wanting to keep learning, even if it doesn't seem to have anything to do with your life, but you're just interested in it, I think can really, you get a lot of valuable information about yourself in those situations.
So good. I can't wait to dive in more. But first, will you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So for the past 30 years, I've been a rock and roll drummer, and made my living that way for several years now. And the main project that I've done for the last 20 years is I play in a Led Zeppelin band. That's kind of how I make my living these days, mostly. I'm the drummer in a band called Zepparella, and that travels all over the United States. And then I'm also a writer, as I said, and I just came out with a book called From Bonham to Buddha and Back: The Slow Enlightenment of the Hard Rock Drummer. And the book is really about my life as a musician as a metaphor for contemplative practice. And for the past 30 years, I've also been an avid meditator, and now I'm a spiritual counselor, a non-denominational minister, Buddhist minister, and I work in several modalities that are based in contemplative psychotherapy, Buddhism, and shamanic techniques. And so I work with clients overcoming trauma and just finding their way through a lot of the barriers that we have, to being really fully in the world. Yeah.
So tell us about your book.
Yeah, so my book, like I said, when I started writing it as little blog pieces in 2016, and because I realized that, when I sit in meditation and I have days off and I'm sitting and very peaceful and exploring my interior life, watching all of my aversions and my come up, my attachments come up within me, and all of the peaceful ways that I find myself being able to explore that peacefulness within myself, that wide awareness into which everything rises and falls. I have those days, and then I get up and I go be a rock and roll drummer. I drive the van, I load in, I argue with the promoter, I make sure the band is okay. I'm tour managing, I'm drumming, I'm having a drink after the show. I'm doing all of those things, and I started to think, where does that place on the mat happen in my daily life? And I started to really see it. I saw it first behind the drum kit as I'm performing, and I'm finding that same place of stillness, that same awareness when I'm playing drums. I can't. I like to think about music flowing through me getting out of the way to be able to have the music really be impactful as it's moving through me, which is kind of the same thing as when we're sitting on a meditation mat and we're allowing maybe spirit or guidance to move through us. And then I saw the ways that, I was able to really watch my reactions. I started to become more aware of my triggers, the things that really got me outside of my heart the whole day. And that kind of observation really started to make sense to me about how it was all one thing. I didn't have a spiritual life and then a rock and roll life. It was like it was all blended into one thing. And I started to write about that and use my music career and little things, little days, little events that happen in my music career, seeing it from that observational lens that I found in contemplative practice. And so the book is a memoir about how I came to decide to be a drummer at 27 years old, issues with my father, and how he died before he got to see me play drums, and some unresolved things there. It's the love story up to drumming, period, because I think drumming is magical. And but the biggest theme is that connection between how do we use these practices in the nuts and bolts of our lives. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that because I was gonna ask you, like, what is, I mean, drumming and Buddha seem completely opposite.
Yeah.
So what's the commonality or what's, but there kind of is a through thread now that you explained it, because you can bring that piece to like every part of your life.
That's right. That's right. And drums are really they're pretty magical. They found that the sound of a repetitive drum, which is the way that shamans have been journeying for, 40,000 years, right? The sound of the repetitive sound of a drum does activate those theta brain waves that give us those spiritual that we're in when we're having those kind of transcendent moments. And using the sound of a drum in a therapeutic setting is really helpful because we can then work on issues within us where we're connecting to our own metaphoric system, the part of us that really knows and wants to give us information without the conscious, judging, critical mind. And so the drum is really helpful in those kind of situations when we're really trying to dig deep into those blocks that we might have. Yeah.
So has there ever been a time in your life? I think so often we have these things, whether it's art or music, these things in our lives that we love, but we think, oh, I'm too old for that. I have to be too mature for that. Or, I have to be an adult now. How have you ever experienced that feeling and how have you pushed past it if you have?
I think I was really fortunate in that I had parents who always said, just do your best at whatever you do, but we don't really care what you do. Just do your best. And I had a good work ethic. So um, kind of instilled in me. And so I didn't have those limits from families. I know that a lot of people have those limits from family, a very rigid sense of who you're supposed to be, what proper behavior is, all of those things. And I didn't really have that. And that was very helpful, I think. And then I think I just have a really strong will that I want to do what I want to do, and I don't want to do what I don't want to do. And that can be really helpful. And I think we all have that. And I think that that's a real big benefit of connecting to that inner child, doing that inner child work, because all of us as a child were headstrong and willful. I mean, it's our creative force, it's our life force, and that gets tamped down, I think, as we're raised and things happen to us, and we retreat into ourselves and start second guessing that really strong, those strong enthusiasms, those strong desires that say, I'm doing this no matter what. And I think that's an important energy to tap into. Yeah.
Can you explain what inner child work is for those who don't know?
Well, I haven't really. I know that there are there are formal modalities that work with the inner child, but it really is about connecting to that who are you who were you before you started following the rules? Who were you before you started making concessions in order to be safe, in order to take care of yourself, and I think in that work, you're also really noticing the very highly sensitive way we tune into the cues that we get around us, and how that sensitivity ends up, we take on the limitations other people give to us, and we erect those within ourselves. So a lot of the times, those things that you were talking about, like I'm too old for this, I'm nobody who looks like me should do that, those aren't our ideas. Those are other people's ideas. And when you connect to that part of yourself before those ideas came into your view, then you can really look at those ideas and say, no, I don't need to follow that. You know, I don't need to. The fear within me of not behaving properly, that wasn't there at some point in my being. And I think connecting to that part of ourself can be really powerful. Yeah.
So you talked a little bit about being, I believe you said a spiritual minister. Is that correct?
Hmm. Hmm.
How did you get into that? What drew you to that world?
Yeah. Well, I was always um, a big idea person. Even as a little kid, my favorite books, my favorite movies were always about the supernatural, or the big, what's beyond this? What are we doing here? And my first kind of forays into that exploration were through literature. I was an avid reader as I was growing up. And then when I was about 27, I went to my first 10-day Vipassana silent meditation retreat. And that was very profound for me. I had kind of a big experience in that. And that set me off into this contemplative exploration of different spiritual practices and different ideas. And at the same time that my music career was kind of coming to the forefront. And then I about, let's see, maybe, I don't know, 12 years ago, 15 years ago, I started to had moved to San Francisco, and I wasn't traveling as much. And I began to recognize that I had been dealing with a really negative internal voice for since I hit puberty, I think. And I started to go into therapy, to Jungian therapy, and try to start thinking like, okay, what is this voice? What is this thing that I've been struggling with? Brought me into therapy. And then I started to get really interested, because of my meditation practice, into the spiritual ideas around how to relieve this internal voice. And then I started to want to kind of study it. And I did a 2-year contemplative psychotherapy program. And when at the end of that, one of the students in the class became a dear friend, and she said, there's this woman who's teaching shamanic practice in Berkeley, California. And I thought, I'm from California, so anything too out there, I always have a big, concern about. And I thought, oh, that seems too weird. But I went anyway to a session with in this modality called depth hypnosis, which is a combination of Buddhism and shamanic tradition, uh, created by a teacher named Isa Gucciardi. And I walked out of that first session. I just went to the session with a practitioner and thought, I'm just going to go and ask her questions about how does shamanism fit into Buddhism and Hinduism, and I want information. And I came out of there and I thought, oh, I think this might help with that internal voice. And I started doing the work, and then I saw such a transformation within myself. That voice quieted down, and I thought, okay, I'm going to learn how to do this for other people, with other people. And I walked into my first workshop of shamanic practice, and a drum came out, and light bulbs went off in my head that maybe I had been coming there my whole life, through the circuitous route of rock and roll drumming.
Nice.
Yeah.
I think something that a lot of us struggle with is silencing the voice in our head when we're meditating. or that's a perception that's out there that you need to silence the voice in your head when you're meditating. What do you say to that?
Yeah. Well, really love to see my internal voice, my internal thoughts, all my thoughts as physiological processes, right? So we have these processes that move our blood and change our molecules every second, and digest our food and start our heart. And what if our thoughts are the same thing? They're these things like if I say right now, stop my blood from moving down my vein in my arm, like there's just no way, right? And so, what if our thoughts are the same thing? What if our thoughts are rising due to our DNA, our proclivities, and then our experience? And what if our thoughts are constantly rising in order to protect us, in order to make sure that we take the next breath, that we protect our heart and our brain, right? And so our thoughts are telling us constantly about threats around us, right? And they're happening, the thoughts happen with it whether we want them to or not. We have no control over them. So now when we sit down in meditation, how does that change our experience? Then what we're doing is we're just observing our thoughts, like, oh, there are those thoughts again. And what we can do then, the work then, is to observe how we push those thoughts away or how we cling to those thoughts, how we judge where we are now to what happened in the past, what's going to happen in the future. And we start realizing that we're never right here. We're always, the thoughts are helping us judge every moment against the past or the future. And when the further that we get step back from the thoughts, the further that we get back from the thoughts without reacting to them, just allowing them to go through, move through without putting any energy to them, then we start backing up into that wide awareness of stillness and knowing within us that is it's a very generative energy. It's where that enthusiasm lies. Um, and so I think the idea of controlling our thoughts, we can't control our thoughts. As anybody who sat for 5 minutes knows, you can't control them, but we can control the reaction to them. And that translates when we get up and we go into the world and somebody cuts us off in traffic. How quickly do we react then? We start watching like, oh, my reaction time becomes a little slower. My reactivity becomes slower and slower because that we're looking through that space of truth, of stillness, of peacefulness, of no need for reactivity. And I know I'm kind of going on and on here, but the one thing that I do want to say is that the purpose of that ultimately is that wide awareness space is where love is where compassion is. And it is a place where, when I'm watching my thoughts, one of the things that comes to me is like, wow, I feel kind of bad for myself, that I have to have been listening to that steady stream of judgment my entire life. And that opens a kind of compassion for myself. And that compassion now translates to everyone I see because I think, wow, maybe everybody is experiencing this. Maybe everybody is following this trail of being constantly berated or judged, in their mind. That compassion in my heart from that place, it opens wider and wider to include the other. And I think ultimately that is the point. That's what we're doing here, right? Is to open our heart as wide as possible, undefended, to be fully with the people in our lives. I think that's the energy of healing in the world. And it's only when we do that on a individual level, I think, that we can see it in the world around us. Yeah.
Yeah, and it kind of maybe goes back to the thing you were talking about earlier, like with being curious and having curiosity in life. And it's like if we could think of our thoughts more and just observe them, but be curious, oh, where did that come from? Instead of judging them. Um,
Perfect. Yeah.
and one book that talked a little bit about it and made it clear for me because I think I didn't quite realize it until I read The Untethered Soul by Michael
Ah,
Singer. And it's like, oh wow, like and he talked
he,
about like somebody cutting you off in traffic and it was the same car as like your ex-boyfriend or whatever. And so then like,
yeah.
immediately you just have a reaction in your body. So it's funny how these things just go unnoticed and then that could ruin the rest of your day.
I know, that's right. He really nailed it. I love Michael Singer's books. Yeah, that's a great reference to that. And one thing too is that for a long time when I was, exploring all of these things, I think I went through a number of years where I really thought that what was necessary was for me to get rid of Clem, that what I was trying to do was, Clem is bad, these thoughts are bad, so I'm intrinsically bad. And let me try to get rid of this personality self and float away in that awareness space that I find in meditation. And one day something terrible happened in the world. There was some tragedy, and I heard it, and I just was noticing in myself, and I realized I felt nothing. I didn't feel the tragedy. I didn't feel the sorrow. And I had this moment of realization like, oh, I don't think that's the point. I don't think we're here to not feel. I think we're here to feel fully. Now we can feel fully and not identify ourselves with the feeling. We can allow the feeling to rise and go. And yet it's very important for us to feel fully. And I had been using spiritual practice as a way to escape, escape Clementine, escape all of my little, foibles and patterns that are always driving me crazy. Um, and that was a big turning point in my spiritual practice. And I have to say that when I started learning about traditional shamanism, now a shaman is traditionally a person who translates the natural world to the tribe, right? So they're looking at nature for messages and for information about how to live a life. And so it's a very grounded practice. We become very aware of our surroundings, aware of being manifest here, both in this three-dimensional reality and in the more esoteric realities, the energetic realities. But it's about coming into my body, coming into my experience, not hiding anymore in the blissful escapism that I could find in spirituality. And that's a subtle thing, but I think it's important to say here that that once I was able to realize I'm okay. I am just a being who's been manifested here as a piece of the divine, and and I don't need to fix me. I don't need to escape me. I just want to continue to open my heart here to myself and to other people and be fully authentic. Then things shifted for me, I think. Yeah.
I think we talked about this a little bit before the podcast started, and this idea of self-help, and people do go sometimes to escape themselves or to fix them, to make them better, whatever the thing is. How do we, I don't either avoid that, or if we find ourselves in that trap, how can we pivot so that we start to accept ourselves?
Yeah, that's a great question, Marie. I I I think that the and this is not fun. It's not fun work, but it's to really sit and ask yourself all of the ways that you think you are intrinsically bad, intrinsically unworthy, intrinsically unlovable. That there's something here that needs to be fixed. What if you are perfect as is? Now, maybe there are things in the personality itself, in your life, that you have goals and changing, I'm not talking about those things. I'm talking about the interior, the basic essence of you. Is it perfect here? Is it just there and waiting to really blossom for you to bring that out? And it's only when we say, I am lovable, I am worthy, there is no shame here. For years there was just this layer of shame that I would encounter when I went into meditation, and it was miserable. And I just kept asking, where is this coming from? And yet it was like this ocean of shame. And it was only when I sat and just allowed myself to really feel it, to allow myself to believe that I was completely unworthy, this this other thing over time started rising up that was like, that's just not true. It's not true. It's this energy that I'm holding from who knows where. And it's not true. And I did some really lovely Tibetan Buddhist meditations where I was, kind of sitting under a tree and inviting, some deity or the Buddha to sit across from me and to feel unconditional love coming from this being. And I did it the first two times I did it, I just blacked out. I just left. I came to at the end of the meditation. I was like, well, that's weird. I wasn't sleeping. I was just somewhere else. And then I had that thought like, wow, don't I believe that I'm worthy of unconditional love coming to me? And I realized that I didn't. Even when I thought of like my mother, say, who I know loves me that way, I still saw within me this feeling that I had to be different in order for her to love me. I had to be someone else. I had to behave in a certain way, and that ultimately I was not lovable. And when I started doing that work, it was not fun, like I said, but I think, for most of us to just really sit and question that, why do I think there's something here that needs to be fixed? Why do I think that I'm ultimately not good? Um, I think most of us have that little area that we can let go of. Yeah.
So, what have you learned from being a spiritual minister? I mean, I know we've been talking a lot of stuff already, but what have you learned along your journey?
Well, that the more work I do on myself, the more I can be of benefit to other people, that I can get out of my own way when I'm, in session with people and just allow for their, my goal is for people to find come into their own power, not for me to give somebody my power, in however way that looks. But just to be present while they're guided to that. And then I also, I really learned that each of us we have deep struggles. Everybody has really, they're really coming from a place of having triumphed over very difficult things. And when I started working as a spiritual counselor, and I would walk down the street and I would just look into people's faces, and I would realize, like, wow, I was taking for granted so much of the time that everybody else was okay and I was the one struggling. And I really realized so many of us have really challenging things that we're dealing with. And I think, my compassion opens more and more. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. I know, and part of ordinary to badass is like those things you've gone through that you think like they could bury you in essence, like they're so hard. You lose a loved one, you lose somebody you shouldn't, or you lose a job, or all these things that happen in our life. We don't realize that that actually makes us more badass coming out on the other side of it. I think it's easy to like get lost, like, oh, I grieved for a year, I was down for, well, you're here now, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like you still got through it. Like it was hard and it sucked, but you still got through it.
Yeah. I think to be able to see the challenges in our lives as lessons, I think that's very empowering. It's not easy, and it's okay to get lost sometimes. But ultimately, if we can look back at things, even in the moment, and say, I'm learning a lot from this. And I think that, yeah, that keeps us in our power. That doesn't give a, in shamanic practice, shamanism is all about power, right? About our own personal power, coming more and more into our power, into our badassness, right? And looking at the ways that we've given away our power, or our power has been taken from us. And one thing we can do is we can give our power to situations, and to take it back by saying, okay, I'm going to take that situation, I'm going to see what were my lessons there, what can I take forward, so I can really fully be completely authentic in myself. I think it's really helpful. Yeah.
So I was having a conversation with a friend recently, and it was about meditation. And I had said, you know what? I don't notice a difference with meditation. I really don't. Like, as I'm doing it, I notice no difference. It's only when I stop doing it that I notice. Like, if I stop, then people will be like, oh, you're really ornery today, or what's up with you today? Have you found that to be true at all for you?
Meditation is a tricky one, because there's so many different kinds of meditation. And sometimes if I feel a little stuck, I will seek out a different kind of meditation. Now, there is one form of meditation, the insight meditation that I've been doing for 30 years, that I think is like a beautiful foundation for all meditation, because it uses the body, points on the body, excuse me, to watch our reactions and our aversions and our clinging, our aversions. In Buddhism, it's the idea is that our suffering comes from aversion, pushing things away, clinging, wanting things to be there all the time. Basically fighting against change. And when we watch sensations on the body, we notice that things change in every second. When I come back to, in a minute after I've gone through witnessing all the places on my body, I come back to my upper lip. My upper lip is going to feel totally different, right? It's going to be this, now it feels cold. Now it feels tingly. Now it feels, and so we start to be okay with change, right? But then a lot of people really love guided meditations. A lot of people love mantra meditations or chanting. Um, and I would say that, if you're feeling stuck in a kind of meditation, it's okay to move around in meditations. For a while, I in the past couple of years, I was practicing a internal mantra meditation, and that opened something different up in my internal world than it had before. So there's this kind of balance between sticking with it and also switching it up, and coming back to things, I think, is important. But, like you said, Marie, the thing is that maybe we don't notice the difference until we're out in the world, and, our reaction time is a little bit less. We don't fly off the handle as much. Yeah. But I do think that daily, anything we do often, daily practice, that is the benefit of it, is that we start to rewire our brain. We start to rewire that reactivity. And it does start to show up in our lives in ways we don't even know.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Or sometimes it's like less stressful, or I can to people that say like, oh, maybe you shouldn't think while you're meditating, or you're supposed to silence all your thoughts. It's like, no, I can hammer all that out during my meditation, so I don't have to stress about it the rest of the day.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, that's right. That's
So,
right. Yeah. Yeah.
Clementine, a lot of times we're in a social media world. Everything looks like it's all gumdrops and lollipops. And they're like, Clementine, she's a rock star. She's so badass, but she's never had to deal with anything hard. Can you just share with us like one of the hardships that you've been through along the way to get to where you are today?
Yeah. Um, well, I say this, and as I say this, as I speak about this, I'm always very judgmental of myself, because I recognize that people go through really, really hard things. And I'm fortunate in my life that I was born with a supportive family, with many friends. I had a little bit of talent in certain areas. I have a good mind. I have all of the benefits, other than financial, I would say. I feel just unbelievably fortunate, right, in my life. And the thing that was the most painful and the most that I struggled the most with was that internal voice. And that internal voice was focused around my body image, my looks, and that happened when I was 12 years old. And it's been a lifetime of disordered eating and really dark moments in my life where I wasn't sure that I wanted to continue on, because this internal life was so excruciating. And I say that I'm judgmental of it because it seems trivial to me when I look at it. And that's another aspect of this, is thinking I should be okay and I'm not. Um, and um, and I learned a lot from it. I really have learned a lot from it. And I think, of all crosses to bear, it was, I lucked out on having that one, but it was, I feel that suffering is suffering. And it was, there was plenty of darkness that way. So I would say that, but then I think, but would I have been as introspective? Would I have spent all of those silent meditation retreats, all of that time meditating, all of that time in therapy, that all of those things that now brought me to an ability to really connect with people who have those same issues and be able to offer some insight. So there was benefit to it. But yeah, it wasn't fun. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that.
Mhm.
I think the should be's are what kills us. It's like we always think it's what we should be, and usually, kind of like you said earlier, that's from somebody else. It's not even coming from us. It's from something we've heard somewhere along the way. So yeah,
That's
drop the should
right.
be's.
I, I know, right? And it's like, it's so frustrating to have something that intellectually, like I could speak all day about that, about letting go. And actually, I have in this podcast quite a bit. And yet there is that, that internal, I almost see it as just it's become like a physical pattern of complete attack. Anything goes wrong in my life and it's a self attack. you know um, I don't push it out on others. I push it to me. And that was why when in my book I wrote about going through YouTube comments, as a musician, as a mildly public person, you have to kind of see these things that people say. And at a certain point, it was actually kind of freeing. I thought, well, nobody could possibly say anything worse than what I've been saying my whole life. There's nobody can really hurt me. Like, you tell me that you don't like the way I look or my drumming or the way that things I say or my voice or any of it. And I've, believe me, you're preaching to the choir, right?
Yeah. No, I love that though. Like nobody can hurt me. I've already said worse to myself. Like it's not
Yeah,
going to hit me, or not going to penetrate me.
that's right.
Yes. So, Clementine, let's end with a tip to encourage women who are in the arena fighting for the life that they want.
Yes. So the first thing I'll say is that it's your ship, baby. It's your world. It's like you get to do what you want to do. Don't let the culture dictate what it is, that draws your enthusiasm, that draws your excitement. If you could do, like, when you were 8 years old and you imagined what you wanted to do, what is that thing that you wanted to do? And what are the barriers that are telling you that that's not possible? I think that that's the first thing I'll say. And the second kind of, more spiritual thing is that you are perfect as you are. You don't need to be better. You really don't. You just follow what makes you excited. Be interested, be interesting, and you'll get there. Yeah.
Yes, I love that. And that totally reminds me, I heard something that said be a Ted, not a ting, like be interested instead of being interesting.
Ah, that's funny.
As an introvert, that was so helpful.
Yeah, right.
So Clementine, how can we connect with you?
Yeah, my website is clemthegreat.com, and everything that I have is there. All of my every aspect of my life is listed there. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Clementine. You've been a total badass and I've enjoyed hearing your story.
Thank you, Marie. Thank you so much.
And with that, we'll end our show. To all the badass women out there staying in the arena, wherever you are, whatever you're doing, own it and get after it.
Now that you've listened to this episode of Ordinary to Badass, we want to hear from you. Go to our website, ordinarytobadass.com/podcast, and submit your own experience on how you took your life from ordinary to badass and get the chance to be on a future spotlight episode of the show. That's ordinarytobadass.com/podcast. While you're waiting for the next episode of the show, wipe off the sweat, dust off the dirt, and get back in the arena.